And I also brought the money, the major amounts of money as the chair, to build the new Gerald Desmond Bridge, $500 million from the state. I'm not here to say that I'm just about bringing money back, but I have been committed to building infrastructure in the state and in this district. I will continue to do it as long as it's sustainable, as long as it's clean, as long as it doesn't lead to pollution.
I'm also a strong supporter of infrastructure, including the two projects that Alan just mentioned. I'll also tell you our Mayor Bob Foster was extraordinarily influential in making both those happen. Further, I'll point out to you that that courthouse could not happen today because my opponent voted to kill redevelopment, which was the largest economic development tool the city of Long Beach and other cities and counties had in the state of California. That project could not happen today. But I'll also tell you something else. I think you pay as you go. So you're right, I am opposed. If Republican or Democrat, if there's a plan for another stimulus, spend an extra $1 trillion we don't have, pass that thing on to our kids or grandkids, you're right, I'm opposed to that. I think what we need to do is we need to get our economy going again. That's what's going to pull us out. And my two highest priorities for investments would be infrastructure and would be education. But I do think we need to get to a balanced budget. I don't think we should spend more than we make. And we need to provide more economic opportunities for everybody. And we do that, it's going to generate more tax revenue for all levels of government, and we can do these great projects. But let's fix the core problems. Let's not just treat the symptoms. Thank you.
This question is regarding what you mentioned earlier, the Ryan budget, and do you support it, and if not, why?
Go first.
No, I'm sorry, Alan, you're next.
I do not support the Ryan budget. I think it's an extremist budget. It was a budget that said that there can be no taxes at all, no taxes. It said that we reduce the tax rate on the richest from 35% to 25%. We get rid of regulations. You know how hard, I have fought, this has been 20 years that I have fought for regulations and to make sure that we get rid of diesel pollution in this district. Can you imagine if we had those dirty trucks coming down the 70 on the freeway angle? Can you imagine if we weren't moving towards a sustainable society? You can't get rid of effective regulations. You must have a balanced approach. The Ryan budget eliminates that and says it's a social Darwinian budget. It says the strongest shall survive, the rest are at risk.
Actually, the Ryan budget doesn't say any of those things.
That's right.
Is it a very fiscally conservative budget? You bet. Is it trying to get to a balanced budget, perhaps quicker and with more pain than as a country we're willing to take? It might be. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. I touched upon that earlier. The biggest problem with the Ryan budget is not any individual piece part of it. The biggest problem with the Ryan budget is it's not cooperative. That's the kind of budget. We don't need a Republican budget or a Democrat budget. We need a budget that both parties can work together on and find some balance, because that's where the answers are. Whether you're on the right or the left, I'm going to tell you, the right does not have all the answers and the left does not have all the answers. We need to work together, not just on budgets, but on solving health care, on solving everything. If you go partisan and you just want to represent your party's platform, we will not move this country forward. And I think everybody understands we need to move this party forward, and it is not the other party's fault. It's both parties' fault. Both parties are not serving us well in Congress today. Thank you.
Please, a reminder to hold your applause until after they're done speaking. We appreciate that. Next question goes to Garrett. How are we going to have a successful economy if we make college unaffordable?
We won't. We won't have a successful economy. We're on the wrong path in California. State legislature's got 30% from the Cal State University system in the last 2 years. Equal cuts at the UC system. Over 20% in the last 3 years in our community colleges. K through 12 is being decimated. Dawn and I have a first grader. We're on the year-to-year plan. Had a great kindergarten, great teacher, wonderful experience. We're in first grade now. We had the same experience, we'll be at Lowell second grade. When our older girls went to school, we were making that 6-year commitment to Lowell. Now we'll see. They continue to chop the funding, we're gonna have to take her somewhere else at some point. And Long Beach has had a long history for an outstanding school system. I'm afraid that we're not gonna have that reputation to the path we're on. And yes, difficult decisions need to be made. It's not easy in Sacramento or Washington or the city of Long Beach. There's not things that say, well, this would have been much easier, but I would tell you, you cannot hack the funding for education the way we have without having devastating long-term consequences. You mentioned college as the example. So what do we have now? We have declining enrollment because there are fewer spots for kids to get an education. You can't get in now. Fewer kids are going to be educated. More are going to be turned away. It's more expensive. They have extremely high, assuming they could get in. You have very high student debt at the end. Not a couple $1,000 debt like I did when I graduated from college. We'll be back in a couple of years. Tens of thousands of debt. And sometimes over 100,000 in debt. It's outrageous the debt these kids have. And then they don't have an economic opportunity to pay it all back when they graduate from high school. And they can't graduate in 4 years now because fewer classes due to budget cuts is extraordinarily difficult. We should agree, we are heading in the wrong direction in education. Now, we might not agree on the solution, maybe we'll need to keep dialoguing on what it is, but we should agree we are heading in the wrong direction and we will have devastating long-term consequences if we don't turn it around.
Truth shall set you free. Let's talk about what the truth is. California was investing in education. California did have a master plan that said that we will have affordable and accessible education. And we were doing it. When the economy went bad, when we lost a tremendous amount of resources, when because of the subprime mortgage collapse, which was done because of the lack of regulation, when the banking industry went bad, and it caused all of us in California not to be able to have money. The governor asked the legislature, primarily the Republicans, because it takes a 2/3 vote to raise taxes when we were losing money, to say to the legislature, we are going to be losing we had a tax on the highest income earners in the state that was going away, and that we also had a sales tax that we had. Let's invest in education. Give us 2 votes. Well, the shock jocks, the people who were on the radio, the Cannon Johns, told the Republicans, if one of you votes for resources for education, one of you, we're going to take you out. And they took out Anthony Adams, and they took out others, and we didn't get 1 vote. So let's be honest what the dysfunctionality is. The dysfunctionality is that we don't have a democratic system that says you need just a majority vote and let people now to put up their vote and then to be held accountable. And we had one party that refused to put up even 1 vote. That's why we had to move education to fees. That is terrible. But let's not talk about the symptoms. Let's talk about what really caused it.
Yeah, Alan, I agree. We used to have a great education system here in the state of California, but we don't currently due to the devastating budget cuts. Where we disagree is, he thinks that more revenue and more taxes, higher taxes was the obvious answer. I don't. I'm not saying more revenue couldn't have been part of the solution, and maybe there was a compromise in there. You got to have an open mind. But we have the same issue in the city of Long Beach. We've had devastating budget cuts year after year after year. There's always a council member or two that says, let's just increase the UUT, the utilities tax, and make the problem go away. Or we could make the government more cost effective. We have 20% fewer employees here in the city of Long Beach than we did a decade ago, so we're all having to work a little harder with a little less. We're having to redefine our services. We're figuring out how to come up with new service delivery models. We've been pressed. We're having to do all those things. And we may have to do a tax increase, by the way. I'm not going to promise you there'll never be a tax increase in the city of Long Beach. But we're going to be very focused on reforming the government, making it as cost effective as we possibly can. Both Mayor Foster and I are committed to that. But we may have to come back. But we're not there yet, and neither is the state.
Gentlemen, the question is, how will you ensure democracy if our democracy is not eroded by corporations and money in general. So how will you ensure that our democracy is not threatened or eroded by large corporations or money in general?
Well, it is being eroded. It is being eroded by large corporations. Unfortunately, we had a decision by the United States Supreme Court on a 5-4 vote called Citizens United. What did Citizens United say? It said a large corporation has the same rights that you have and that you have. They are people, and they have ability. They are protected under the First Amendment and free speech, which means that they can spend unlimited amounts of money on elections, and they can buy elections. That is a tremendous erosion of democracy. We are losing that democracy because it's costing us too much money. We must change the Supreme Court. We must not have the Supreme Court playing to such corporate interests. And the same thing that I said before, that you've got to create sustainable systems. Business community, environmentalists, workers, cities have to come together. We did it here. It takes a lot of work, and it can be done. But I think the major threat right now to American democracy is the fact that our elections are for sale, and we have given over that to corporate interests.
You know, I'm looking for a spot here to delineate, you know, between Alan and I on this issue. But I don't know, I think we might be in 99% of agreement here. That's 100. I guess the only, maybe a little disagreement is I would throw more people in. I wouldn't just throw corporations. Absolutely, I agree. I think democracy is being eroded by all the special interest money. Although now that I've spent a little bit of time in Washington, I found as much special interest money with unions, with corporations, with chambers of commerce, with environmental organizations that we might all like, but there is special money, interest money everywhere you turn in Washington, particularly when you're in the middle of a campaign. And I will tell you, I think that's wrong. I adamantly disagree with the Citizens United decision, not because it benefited corporations, I don't care who it benefits. It's wrong. It's bad for us. All of us in this room were disenfranchised when somebody else is impacting the income or impacting the outcome of our election. If I could have what I want, I was kidding. What I like is that you could only write a check to my campaign if you could vote for me. So you live here in the district, you could write me a check. You live in Texas, you can't. You live in San Francisco, you can't. You live in South Orange County, you can't. You live in San Diego, you can't. You live here, I want to represent you, you should be able to contribute to my campaign. You shouldn't be able to if you're not. My dear brothers, businesses. You have a business downtown? Then sure, write Alan or I a check. But if you're a business interest outside our district here in the 47th, why should you get to play? And I know many people disagree with that. We're violating, they have free speech, they have rights. I understand that. But you want a pure outcome? Let's take all the special interest money out of the election. So I think that Alan and I are pretty much in agreement on this. It's not good for democracy.
I would like to respond. I agree with that about Hinton, but this is not a fair fight. You cannot count environmentalists on one hand as compare them to corporate interests. That is absolutely ludicrous. You can also not talk about corporate interests and working people and labor as the same thing, where in fact corporate interests have unlimited amounts of resources. Labor still has to play by certain rules, and there's now an attempt in California to undercut the working men and women in California. It's absolutely an attempt to undercut democracy. There's a group, two multi-billionaires, the Koch brothers. Do you know who the Koch brothers are, folks? They're out in the Midwest. They're promoting toxic, you know, they have denied the existence of global warming. What they've done is to try to undercut California's Climate Change Act, AB 32. These are corporate interests that have spent millions and millions of dollars to come in to undercut our health protections. There is no equating special interests. I agree with Gary that we probably should have public financing and that we should eliminate it all. But don't tell me that corporate interests do not rule the roost today. They do. And that's really what I believe in my heart.
know, if we kept talking long enough, I knew we'd soon find an area of disagreement. That's crazy. Oh, come on. Who in California thinks the state legislature is owned by corporate interests? Look at the votes. Look at the outcomes. That's absolutely not true. Is there too much corporate money in Sacramento? You bet, in my opinion, but even a little is too much, so I'm probably not the fair judge. But there is far more union and labor money in Sacramento than there's corporate interests, and we would have dramatically different outcomes. I'm not going to say better, necessarily, but we would have dramatically different outcomes if that wasn't the case. It's all bad for us. Again, whether it's chamber, whether it's corporate, whether it's labor, it's all bad for us, because their agenda may not be what our agenda here is in the district.
How would each of you handle the current and ongoing embassy crisis in the Middle East?
Whoever's turned it, who's turned it?
Gary's. And there was a second.
But thank you for letting me take the bullet. Thank you.
There was also a second part to the question. Passively or aggressively?
Give me the question.
So the question was, how would each of you handle the current and ongoing embassy crisis in the Middle East? Passively or aggressively?
First of all, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know all the facts. Don't know what happened. Don't know how it happened. I don't know the details. I don't know what it was. So let me see if I can't give you some maybe broader policy of how I would come at that kind of thing. First of all, I'll tell you, I disagree with the position that the candidate Mitt Romney's taken. I don't think you criticize your commander-in-chief. You only have one. I don't care if you like him or not. You have one commander-in-chief. We need to support that individual. Whoever is in the office, we need to support him. Doesn't mean we can't disagree. Doesn't mean we can't bicker. But, you know, that is our commander-in-chief. We need to be supportive of that individual. Secondly, I think there should be some reaction by the United States. I think that's appropriate. But we need to make sure we understand what our mission is, what's the outcome we want. You don't just get started in something and not know where you're going. And that needs to be in a collaborative manner. We have a commander-in-chief, we have one, but I do hope that senior leadership in both the Democrat and the Republican Party is with the commander-in-chief when a decision is made, and we are united and unified when we move forward. Thank you.
I think that was a very thoughtful answer, and I just agree with the council member that we need to have more of the facts come out and understand what took place. I think the first thing that we need to do, though, is to really take a moment and to pause and to reflect how difficult it is to represent the United States and to be an embassy member, and the loss of Christopher Stevens and the other members of the embassy staff. They were there because of after the tremendous changes that had taken place in Libya. They had supported the revolution, they were supporting the people, and they gave their lives. So we ought to understand that this is an extremely difficult job, and those folks are out there fighting for democracy. And this is not in the case of the United States stepping in. You know, this is a case of being under of a horrible situation. Part of that situation was, to be honest, was the disgusting and discriminatory anti-Islamic message that was sent out. I mean, there is no excuse for that. That is terrible. That is all of us in this room. I think one of the things that I'm really proud of being a Californian is the fact that we really try to show tolerance for all people and understand that. This idea of putting out on YouTube a horrible message, there's no excuse for that. Now, having said that, which I strongly believe, there's no excuse also for the attack on the United States Embassy. There is absolutely no excuse, and those people must be brought to justice for doing that. And I support the president in bringing people to justice, because there is no excuse for us to put our people at risk to protect the rights and freedoms of others, and then to be killed. That there is no excuse for. So that's what but I think that we need to take a moment, as Gary said, and really try to understand. But there are many multiple parts to this, and we have to understand it was a horrible